The Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, the Players, all caps, Championship, DraftKings picks, and preview. There's a lot of big contests out there this week. The $10 is the big one on DraftKings, $250,000 for first prize. You may want to enter that if you want to win $250,000, or go to the description of this video or podcast, because you will find the link to the Pat Mayo Experience DraftKings Listeners League Open. As we record this right now on a Tuesday morning, there are less than 1,000 spots left for the 5,000 person tournament, $75,000 guaranteed, no rake, $15 to enter. You can enter up to 3 times. So if you have not done that yet, I suggest you go do it right now. Joining me on the line to break down the Players Championship coming up first, he is newly engaged. He is excellent at golf coverage. He is Rick Gehman. What's going on, man?
Hey, Pat. Yeah. Lots of new stuff going on for me, but happy to be back with you. Should be a lot of fun.
When you win the $200,000 this week, are you going to have a better wedding?
Oh, yeah. So actually we are pretty anti-wedding. I found like the one girl in the world who like does not have a wedding. So I'm saving all them bucks, Pat.
You, sir, are a hero among men. I, as someone who paid for their wedding, it was the worst. And me being like, do we need a wedding? Like, what if we just mail a card to everyone and be like, yeah, we're married. Don't worry about it. We'll go to City Hall. So that sounds great. You can go on like 2 trips around the world.
Yeah, exactly right. I'll convince her of that, but I'm sure she'll make me, upgrade the ring a little bit.
All right, the second member of the team from Awesemo.com. He is not newly engaged, but he did just win a Rick Moranis lookalike contest. It's Ben Rasa.
That's true. Not engaged. We'll see. If I take down the 200K, the heat might be turned up on that front, but we'll see what we can do this week.
Yeah, so you got to get engaged before, because then there's no expectation for the ring to be like 250K sized big.
Yeah, maybe I should. This tournament's always a little dicey, so maybe I should get engaged before I make my lineups this week, and then lock in that medium to lower sized ring.
See, that's the plus EV move when you're
Sharp
doing
move.
doing all these lineups. And I mean, don't forget that you did win the Thunderdome at the Masters last year. What was that good for? Like 110,000?
Yeah, no, it was a good one. So, but I'm keeping that on ice. I'm going to try to repeat in a month or so, but we got the Players on tap. There's some big tournaments, like you said.
Yeah, so this is a preview. I mean, when I do the big Masters blowout show for the DraftKings picks, this is going to be the team that you're probably going to look at here, unless things go disastrously wrong over the next hour to 90 minutes or so. And I do want to let everyone know that if you smash the like button, leave your DraftKings handle in the comment section, and give me your favorite play from $7,000 to the $7,500 range. You are in a draw for $20 DK dollars. I'll announce the winner on next Monday's show. Or if you leave a podcast review on iTunes, Stitcher, or Spotify, 5 stars, something nice about the show, and your DraftKings handle, so I can identify you, you will also be in a draw for $20 DK dollars. In full disclosure, I have been so piss poor at the Players on DraftKings the last 2 years. I've made notes to myself to not play, but guess what? I'm going to play anyway because I can't help myself. So, Ben, when you're thinking about roster construction for this week, knowing going in that there's always a slew of big names, favorites that end up missing the cut, this tournament's just a legit crapshoot a lot of the time. What do you think of a more balanced build this week? Although the pricing is very soft, that you could fit 2 big guys in with scrubs who aren't super scrubs, that maybe the move is to fade everyone in the 10K range.
There seems to be, there's some history. If you look back the last couple of years, obviously a lot of guys with all this water, they can go down, and the balance build allows you to get 6 guys you're going to feel more comfortable with. But you did just allude to, it's very soft pricing. There's a lot of talent, even as you drop down into the low 7s, high 6s. So I still worry about the win equity if you sacrifice, all of the top, say 5 to 10 guys. I doubt I'll do that on too many lineups, but at the same time, the nice thing about these strong fields is you do have every option in your playbook. You're not really forced to do anything you don't want to.
Rick, what are you thinking about lineup building? And can you talk a little bit about your cascading effect of building lineups?
Yeah, so this week is perfect for cascading. So this is what I used to take down a tournament at the Masters last year, which is essentially I like to do it in the 20 max. I think it gives you a good number of lineups, but basically really grind hard on one core. Which for this week you can, as Ben noted, you can basically get anybody you want. You can make that core of 6 golfers a very balanced core, or take a couple of guys at the top and fill it out. And then as you go through your 20 lineups, I replace one guy in each of those spots. So if Dustin is my highest owned golfer, I replace him 3 times and keep the rest of the lineup the same. Then move on to my second highest price golfer, et cetera, et cetera. And it basically gives you extreme exposure to one core. So if you're good at like making, single lineups or narrowing your focus down, and you get a bunch of those guys through, you're in line for a big payday. If not, a couple water balls, you've missed out and you've not cashed on any lineup. But Ben is absolutely right. I mean, any strategy that you want here is pretty much in play, which can be a little bit overwhelming. So hopefully we can kind of figure it out over the next little bit.
Do you have any early leans on how you think you should actually construct your lineup? Like, do you think you're going to be more of a stars and scrubs type man, or a pure balance, or somewhere probably in between, which is, I think, where most people are going to land?
Yeah, I think naturally I tend to be more balanced. I tend to fade the top most weeks. So if the highest price golfer wins, I'm usually having a bad week. So because I can just get slightly better golfers in my balanced build this week, that's probably going to be appealing enough for me to continue on that path. Although I did create a few kind of like, hey, I can get like two $6,100 guys in here and then just absolutely pile in the studs, but I don't think that is how I will play the majority of my lineups.
I do want to let everyone know that fantasynational.com is a great place to use all these tools. You have the giant stat base, ownership projections, lineup generator, and there's a brand new feature as of today, the notes section. So next to each of the player, there you can pop up the notes, and members of the Fantasy National community, everyone who has a membership has the ability to make notes. They could be quippy comments, they could be good stuff they can find. Let's just see what we got here with Justin Thomas. If we open them up here for the notes section, oh, this note is from me. Oh, it's just showing me my own notes. So someone says shot 68-66 the weekend in Sawgrass last May. Hasn't won since WGC Bridgestone the first week of August last year. Moved to March. May provide beneficial to his game. Ranks number 1 on tour in par 5 scoring average. That's not bad, actually, for Justin Thomas. So let's talk about the board as we go through this after everyone goes and becomes a member at fantasynational.com today. And there's a nice show on the DraftKings YouTube feed from Sunday where I walk you through my process and how I evaluate this stuff. But at the very top of the board, Dustin Johnson is there. He's never finished better than 12th at the Players' Championship, although the last 2 years he's come 17th and 12th. And it's really tough to get your super studs all the way through. Justin Thomas is second at 11-1. Rory is 10-8, coming in hot fire. Tiger, Rose, Brooks. That is your $10,000 and above collection. Ben, if you have to go with one of these guys, which one are you going with? Because after some soul searching, I ended up betting Tiger at 28-1, and I think he might be my favorite play from this top end.
He's close for me too. It would still be Rory for me. I know the Sundays are not doing anyone any favors in the Team Rory camp, but at the same time, these finishes, if you zoom out, it's been quite a run for him. Had some early bumps like most people. I think I don't worry too much about course history per se here. I just like that my guys have seen the course, and Rory has plenty of experience here. I think like most guys, it takes a little to figure it out. So he's not the most expensive. He's not the cheapest of the 10Ks, right in the middle, kind of with Tiger. I think if I go up top, it would be Rory. And then honestly, second would be Tiger. I think almost counterintuitively, his game now suits a course like this a little better than what the old Tiger was. So I don't mind him coming off the injury. I'm sure he's fine. 10-5, no problem with that price.
Rick, I'm going to guess you like Rory too. Every single person I've talked to likes Rory this week, and Ben just kind of laid out the case. The guy has been an absolute monster over the past 2 months, just high finish after high finish, 5 straight top 10s, 4 top 5s in that stretch too. The only poor performance he really had was last weekend at Bay Hill when he went into the final round, 1 shot off the lead, and ended up just having a poor Sunday. So do you worry that he's going to be like 35% owned here?
No, I don't really. I mean, listen, there's going to be so much ownership to go around when you can get literally any combination of lineup that you want, all of the big name players in the field. Ownership, I think, and especially this is a highly talked about week. We've seen this before where everyone is on someone Monday evening, and we say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Rory is going to be the highest owned golfer of the week. Thursday morning comes and he's like 17% because everyone just kind of moved off and thought we saturated the market. So I'm not worried about it here as we record this, especially with all the other big names. It's not like, the RBC Canadian where DJ's the only guy in the top tier. That's certainly not the case, but Rory has gained strokes tee to green in 18 of his 19 rounds since the Century Tournament of Champions. To put that into perspective, I think DJ's done it like 10 of 14. Like Rory has just been unbelievably good and unbelievably consistent. And yes, he hasn't been able to close on Sundays, but you keep knocking on the door, it's going to happen. The only other guy that I would throw out to you gentlemen here is Brooks Koepka. He's the cheapest of these $10,000 guys. Again, outside of 2 rounds or 1.5 rounds last week, he's been playing pretty well. That putter let him down again last week, as it did at WGC Mexico. He quickly bounced back at the Honda after coming back from Mexico for a T2. His 2 best finishes here at Sawgrass were the last 2 years, 16th and 11th. So out of those, handful of guys over 10,000, I'll be focusing the majority of my shares on Rory, Brooks, and I did play Tiger in the one and done. Spoiler alert.
Oh, see, I bet on Tiger. You played him the one and done. I assume that, Rasa, when you make the majority of your high stakes lineups, we're going to see a lot of Rory Tiger lineups.
No, we could see a couple. There's one guy in the 9s that we're probably about to get to that I really like, and I think I'll kind of split the difference in terms of Rory ownership. I think there's a very good chance he's maybe towards the top, but there's enough guys that it will spread around. Having said that, I probably will pair him up with someone in the 9s that I think could be a little sneaky to get some differentiation right off the bat.
All right, I'm going to guess, because there's 2 guys in the $9,000 area that just seem like no one is going to be talking about. No one wants to play them, and maybe for good reason. I don't know. But let's stick in the 10K spot for a second. If you got to go Dustin or Justin Thomas, people are it's weird that people sour on Justin Thomas a little bit. One of the notes that I had made from him from WGC Mexico last year, not like 3 weeks ago, in 2018, through the Honda Classic, he had gained strokes on approach in every single event. He had not gone more than 2 rounds with losing strokes on approach at any point over those past 12 months. So when you look at it, he had 3 stretches of back-to-back losing strokes gained approach. It was at WGC Mexico, it was at the Players the year before, and at the BMW Championship. He's now lost in 5 of his past 7 rounds. He hit his weird shot at the Honda and hurt his wrist and was just a disaster on the weekend. Ben, does that worry you about Justin Thomas? Because if you look at every key metric that should check out for this course, Justin Thomas, I don't like the phrase checks all the boxes, but he checks all the boxes.
It's somewhat concerning, but I'm more apt to just say, this is a top end player. I'm not too worried about it. He can get crazy hot. He can scramble, which, these are smaller greens. It would be pretty hard to get here just hitting greens. I know there's some great iron players, but if you can't scramble, you're going to have a tough time around this course. So I like that. Obviously, he's a timely putter. I have no problem with him. Obviously, I have no problem with DJ. These are the best players in the world. But for me, taking a slight savings to these other guys just seems like what I want to do on most of my lineups.
So, Rick, it seems to me like Tiger, Rory, 1-2 in terms of where people seem to like them the most. They're probably going to be the most owned. I like your Brooks call. I can see him flying a bit under the radar, but it just seems like DJ, Rose, and Justin Thomas are not necessarily forgotten, but one of those guys is going to come in at single-digit ownership, I think.
Yeah, and that's probably right. Realistically, guys who might have played Justin Rose last week who are disappointed probably don't go back to him because he's sitting there in sandwich pricing between Brooks and Tiger. But one of these guys could absolutely win you a GPP. We're splitting hairs kind of to what Ben alluded to when you get some of these top golfers. So we're looking for anything that can kind of differentiate them. There is concern around Justin Thomas who, okay, what was it? A handful of weeks ago, we were saying these approach numbers are kind of out of control. He's doing something that might not be sustainable. We come to find out, it wasn't. And maybe it was him slapping his wrist on the tree there, which looked painful. That kind of turned it for him. But that's definitely a concern. And you get Dustin Johnson coming off a win that really no one's talking about, and we've discussed all the other options below him that are cheaper that you can take for savings. I think DJ, the guy with the highest, win probability, might come in a little overlooked here.
Yeah, you can actually make a lineup that is somewhat contrarian if you use the number 1 and number 2 players in the world this week.
Right.
That's
It's absolutely wild.
that's not going to happen all that often. So Ben, you talked about the guys that you want to pair up with Rory. I'm going to guess it's either Rahm or Xander, one of those two.
It's Rahm.
Of course it is. It's always Rahm.
It's always Rahm. What can I say? Obviously, it's one of these things, and this is why, you kind of have to embrace that variance. I think Rahm, he is my favorite play in the nines. He's also the guy, if you told me one of these guys just is awful, I would say it's probably Rahm. I'm not sure how good his game. Obviously, he likes to be super aggressive off the tee. I think playing this in March will help that somewhat. I still don't think he can just pull driver on every hole. He hasn't been around. He's not on people's minds. I think the allure of possible really low ownership on Rahm is pulling me in. And, he's got two showings at the Players. He couldn't putt in either. Massive blow-ups. That MDF a couple years ago was outrageous. But he's a guy that I still think has all the upside in the world. And if you're giving me, a significant discount, he's the type of guy I have no problem if he's my second man in on a lot of my teams.
So the entire $9,000 range, it kicks off with Ricky Fowler, who's won at this course before. Then it goes into Jon Rahm, Ben Bryson, Jason Day coming off the WD, Sergio Garcia, and Xander Schauffele at the $9,000 threshold. So Rick, I think that Ricky Fowler and Sergio are going to be the two where all the ownership clusters to in this range. If it's not one of those two, who is it for you? Is it a Bryson? Is it a Rahm? Or do you just, if Jason Day starts, is he someone that you would potentially consider using?
Yeah, so this $9,000 range is a little bit of a dead zone for me. I can find problems and concerns with all of these guys, but I'm glad you kind of teed me up there for Jason Day because I could rant about this a little bit. Last week, hurting all of his owners, jading those guys who he plays 6 holes for. His ownership is going to be microscopic this week, right? And what is his incentive to continue to just tee it up and play 6 holes? Like, he has very little incentive to do that, right? He's not grinding out here on tour. He's trying to win these things. If he tees it up, he probably thinks he's going to be able to play 4 rounds. Whether he ends up being correct is kind of another thing that we might need to talk about. But if he's going to start, like, this is an opportunity to get a really high leverage situation on a guy that no one wants to play, that has won here before, on paper absolutely fits this. It's just like, can we get 4 rounds out of his back, or is he going to wake up Friday or Saturday morning not feeling well? I think I trust a guy like this, a top athlete, to be able to figure it out, especially after he blew it last week. So if he's going to tee it up on Thursday, you don't have to have much of him to have a pretty significant edge on the field.
What do you think, Ben? It seems like everyone's just projecting onto Jason Day right now. No one wants to take him because he screwed everyone last week. Yet none of these similar concerns are coming up for Tiger, who also pulled out last week with a neck injury. It's just he didn't tee off and screw everyone.
Absolutely. I think Rick said it perfectly. I'm in line with those comments. It's more that he teed it up for 6 holes and then withdrew. If he would have just pulled out before the tournament and now he said, I feel better, none of this venom would be in the community. And that's a good thing. You want to roster players that people are angry at. You get them at lower ownership. Jason Day, to me, it's debatable, but I think he's the best around the green player in the world. And that's not a bad thing when you're at Sawgrass. So 9,200 lower ownership, there's almost no doubt that I get over the field on him. And that's mostly because I don't think it's going to take that much to do that. If Jason Day comes out and plays 8 holes and pulls out again, I'm going to have more dead lineups than most, but my week is not over by any stretch.
Yeah, even last week, I used 70% Day in my lineup, so my week was pretty much over.
That's not good.
After about 6 holes, he was the guy that I really went all in on. I didn't make money last week. I lost money, but I didn't end up with a big 0 in my lineups. There was enough Molinari to go around to really help the cause a little bit. So you're not cooked, but you don't need 70% Day here. I don't think this is a place where you want to be like, you know what? It didn't work last week. I'm going to double down on Jason Day this week. But if you play 10 lineups and you have him in 2, you're going to be wildly overweight to the field compared to everyone else. Like, I'm looking at early ownership projections. These could fluctuate, obviously, because we're talking on a Tuesday morning. We have another day and then another day for people to talk up and talk down, and maybe he ends up higher. But as of this point, I have Rahm, Bryson, Xander, and Day, all coming in at single-digit ownership.
Yeah, that's appealing to me.
Do you know who the guy who isn't going to come in at single-digit ownership? My favorite play in this range is Sergio. So I know everyone's going to be on Sergio. How much chalk can I eat here, Ben?
Again, I always try to not. I try to take the plays on their own merit, and then when I combine them to make 6 guys, I say, is this gonna work? So like, if I do something really weird up top, I'm not gonna worry about taking the most common plays in the 7K range. You only need to be different. You just need a path to victory. You don't need 6 wild guys. You don't want 6 chalky guys. So Sergio, he makes a ton of sense. If you start like Rory Sergio, not that there's anything wrong with that, but you're going to need to probably change it up with those last 4 because you're not going to be the only one doing that.
Yeah, what do you think on this, Rick, as it pertains to Sergio? Let's say you started your lineups, I don't know, Brooks Sergio. Would that be a proper way to start?
I don't know if it ends up being proper come Sunday evening, but I think it would be different, which is what we're looking for here. Ben's right. You don't need 6 outs. You need 1 out. So finding a way to be unique, whether it's playing chalky guys with a little bit of wild guys, or even a week like this, leaving some money on the table. Like if you want to play Sergio and leave $500 on the table or something like that, you're probably going to have some unique builds. So there's a lot of different ways to get there. With the soft pricing, you can look at a lineup at 49,005. I've built some even less than that I'm like, oh wow, this looks pretty good, which always scares me. It gets me to put in 100 more lineups when I like every single one. But yeah, there's a lot of different ways to get there this week.
So Rom, Bryson's a really interesting one because he's had back-to-back poor weeks when people were on him. We'll see where he comes in. I'm still waiting to decide whether I want to go in on Bryson or not, because if this is like, let's say, Heritage, a place where Bryson has played really well over the years, or even somewhere like John Deere Classic. This is a much more difficult course than TPC Deere Run. But again, small greens, you need to be dialed in with the irons or have the ability to save yourself if you do miss the green. Just places where Bryson has popped up before, and this might be a nice spot to get back on the swing. As I mentioned to Feinberg on Monday's show, maybe he just unplugged himself and plugged himself back in. I mean, sometimes that's all it takes for you to reset a computer. And if Bryson comes up that way, then we're looking pretty good. But the big name, I mean, we talked about Day, we talked about Tiger and those 2 injuries. $8,900. As of right now, I have Jordan Spieth projected at 3% ownership. Rick, can you stomach playing Jordan Spieth? Because I can't.
I've been basically going down on the Jordan Spieth ship for the last handful of weeks, and I said I'm going to be a week early rather than a week late. But I think I'll bet that this is not the week that he goes out and wins this thing, and I'm just coming in early. It's just been so bad from a lot of angles. He doesn't have great course history here. The guys priced around him are, perceivably much better options. There's just like no storytelling or no narrative that I can get to for Spieth that makes me want to roster him. I guess outside of the fact that his name is Jordan Spieth, which I can't really bank on this week. So no, as someone who has been really sticking by him and waiting for that week to bounce back, it's he's probably not going to get my dollars this week.
So, Ben, Rick was waiting to be a week early. He's out. I'm out. Are you out too? And does that mean Jordan Spieth wins?
Yeah, I mean, I adhere to that as well, but it turned, I might have been a year early because I've been playing. It's just not working. I'll say this. If he's 3%,
I have him at I have him right now at 2.6%.
Then I'll if that's the case, I'll be over. There's no doubt, because I'll just bank and I'll go in firmly expecting him to play. But I don't think anything from a stats perspective points to a reason to roster him, to be honest. The opportunity cost is there. There's plenty of other guys cheaper and above him that I would rather have. But I still think that there's an outcome where he pays you off. And when you're talking ownership like that, you don't need that much. So I'm not going to have, I probably have 10% of him. And if that gives me 2.5x on the field, I can live with that, and I'll sacrifice 10% of my lineups if I have to.
Yeah, I think it depends on how many lineups you want to play if you want to deploy a strategy like that. Like, I'm far more comfortable paying the extra $400 and going down with the Jason Day ship again, just because I know that he's still at least good, rather than allocating some shares for Day, allocating some shares for Spieth. I'd rather just play Day if I'm going to do that in my 4 of my 20 lineups and move on my way and just leave Jordan Spieth for everyone else.
I'm not. I'll say this. Like I said, I'm definitely gonna have some exposure. But if you're playing less lineups, or you're just like, I don't know how many times Spieth really kills you. Because truth be told, if he's 3%, yeah, obviously if he goes out and wins, you're gonna need him. But there's a lot of scenarios where he plays well, a lot better than he has, and he's still not a killer for you. There are not going to be that many people in your tournaments that have him, so you can survive without him, even if he has a good showing.
Yeah, like if he wins, you're probably screwed. But if he comes T5, he might be on the winning lineup. But if he comes T5, he still needs to be paired up with 2 other guys inside the top 5 and someone who wins to win this specific week. In terms of one of these giant GPPs that you could fade him, he has a good week and you could still win.
Absolutely.
All right, so the rest of the $8,000 range, it starts off with Spieth at the top. It's weird just to see him as sort of like an outlier. He's an odds outlier here too because he's like 60-1 to win. And then you got Tommy Fleetwood right below him who's like 28-1 to win. He's at 8,800. Cantlay, Molinari coming off the big week. Webb, Finau, Matsuyama, Adam Scott, Patrick Reed, Matt Kuchar. That's the entire $8,000 range. Rick, we'll go to you with this. If I want to full fade Francesco Molinari, how stupid am I going to look on Sunday?
I think pretty stupid. And this is a rare opportunity that we only get it like 5 times a year on DraftKings when the pricing comes out early. So it's like the majors and the players where pricing comes out early enough that it's not really impacted by what happens on Sunday, right? So Molinari goes out, wins this thing. His price stays at 8,600. He's probably more expensive if this pricing comes out on Monday, Monday afternoon, like we would normally see. And then there's always this, this idea of, okay, guy won last week. Maybe he can't back it up, but we haven't seen that from Molinari at all. In fact, quite the opposite. He's literally the poster boy for just getting scorching hot for over like a 3-month period that culminated last year when he went out and won the Open Championship and he had all those first and second place finishes in a row. So we've seen him carry it over week to week. He was stellar last week. He has, 4 top 6s in 8 starts here at Sawgrass. I mean, this seems to fit. He's going to be very highly owned, but I mean, we just spent however much time talking about ways to differentiate, go find a weird build at the top or leave some money on the table. I think this is a spot where I'm not going to pass up the opportunity because we only get it maybe 5 times a year.
So what do you think on this, Ben? Because I'm actually with Rick. I think when Molinari gets hot, he's someone to actively target. But if we're talking about a guy who could, let's say, just bare minimum 20%. He could reach up to 30% by this time. I think the only other player that could rival his ownership might be Paul Casey at this point. But is the price too good to pass up? Is this like what Danny Willett was at the Masters like 3 years ago when he was just underpriced because the pricing had come out so early? He was like $1,000 underpriced. And you're just like, you know what? You take him and figure the rest out.
Well, yeah, Molinari, it's interesting because Rick brings up a super sharp point. The pricing came out, and there are guys that obviously he would be in the 9s. There's no doubt in my mind. And the ownership, though, would be less. It wouldn't be non-existent even if he was in the 9s. But you have to, for me, it's just a balance. Is the added ownership on him at a high variance course worth it? To me, the answer is no. And you guys are both 100% right. Molinari is a streaky player. When he gets going, he gets going. He's going to a good course, but it's still a course with a ton of water. There's nobody to me above, having an ugly showing here. You're going to see scattered results no matter who you pick. And he needs a good showing. Obviously he goes out and smashes, it's over for me. But 8,600, he's going to have to return a pretty good value. And there's just too many other guys for me that I'm willing to take a 1/3 the ownership, half the ownership on, and kind of go against the grain with Molinari.
So Molinari has the 3rd most strokes gained total at this course over the past 5 years. And you mentioned, Rick, the top 10 finishes that Molinari has put off. He has 4 in the past 6 years, but he did miss the cut at this spot last year too. Like even to Ben's point, it almost seems like if you did put in an ownership cap on everyone, that if you just faded the super high end chalkiest players, especially not the very elite guys, the next tier down, unless you consider Molinari as a part of that top tier, maybe he deserves to be mentioned as someone like Brooks Koepka is, $10,000. Maybe Molinari should be in that range as it pertains to DraftKings. That's where he's in the betting market coming into this week. Some of that is recency bias. The other is a year's worth of excellent golf, and he's just getting going again. But if he's going to be 30%, and this is a high variance course, does that sway you a little bit to say, hey, you know what? Maybe I don't take him. Maybe I just use Patrick Cantlay, who's right next to him.
Yeah, for me, just a little bit. I mean, there's plenty of grenades out there, right? We've seen guys bookend wins with missed cuts, and I mean, Fowler has basically gone like win, miscut, second, miscut. I mean, there's a plenty of grenades. There's big numbers lurking everywhere. So I think in general, staying away from the super chalky guys is probably fair, but that also implies that you're good at projecting ownership, right? So for me, I'm terrible at this. And even looking at some of the projections, splitting hairs between 25, 30%, like that's a big difference. So if you can accurately project ownership, I think that you should tend to fade some of these higher owned guys, but you have to be really confident in your ownership. And quite frankly, that's one of my flaws. I am not.
So Molinari projects, at least for now, if we can see it, to be the highest owned guy. Adam Scott is probably going to be second in this range. I would imagine, just because he hasn't missed a cut here in like 7 years, he is the player with the most total strokes gained, and the putting has returned just a tad so far this season. Has a win at the Players before, and he won that in a March event. He's also won the Honda Classic in March, another Florida course with small green, so he is perfectly primed to come in here, garner a lot of ownership. I don't know if I have the most interest. I'll see how everything shakes out, but in this $8,000 range, I like Molinari, but I think I like Hideki and Matt Kuchar the best if I'm going to play my lineups. What do you think, Ben?
Hideki, I think a lot of people are going to like Hideki. I expect him to be popular as well. His putting is, I don't know what's going on. He needs to talk about reset like Bryson. Plug him back in and reset Hideki bot, because everything else is on fire. He just can't putt. So 8,300, no problem with that. I'll just, like a lot of these guys, you just hope that he can just hold his own on the greens. You're not asking him to gain 5 strokes. You just don't want to lose 5 strokes. This is on a macro a dead range for me. I don't love the 8s, but if I had to pick one guy, it would be Hideki.
Who would be your other guy to complement with Francesco Molinari, Rick? Because like I said, I like Kuchar, I like Hideki, both guys that have played really well at this course in the past. But I'm looking at, again, early ownership projections, and it seems like no one wants a piece of Tony Finau, which is shocking because he's like the most popular player in DraftKings golf.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I mean, the endorsement on Hideki for good reason, right? I mean, of the guys who played last week, I think Hideki had the second most strokes gained and the least, and lost the most on the greens. He lost 8 strokes on the greens, which is almost impossible for someone not named Hideki. But yeah, the rest of this tier is interesting. I like Kuchar. Kuchar is a guy who's obviously, if you want course history, just guys who have played here a lot, who have that knowledge, certainly fits the mold. But Finau gives us that same issue. Where was it? Waste management, right? Where it's like, oh, hey, it's Tony Finau. He's been great, especially for DraftKings scoring. Makes a lot of birdies, even if he's not going to finish very, very highly. He almost always outpaces his finishing position. But like really bad course history here, right? Like miscut, 57th, which is kind of similar to what I think was the Waste Management, where he just has 3 or 4 straight miscuts. And it's one of these situations where maybe this isn't a good fit for him. I don't tend to always agree with that because of the variance here, and you're 1 or 2 balls in the water away from missing the cut. So I'm willing to give a lot of guys a pass. So I do lean on these big time birdie makers, these guys that can keep your lineups afloat, even if they're going to finish 25th or 30th or something like that. And Finau certainly fits the mold. To your point, Pat, I haven't heard another word about him this week. So I think we get him probably at one of his lower ownerships, because he's usually a pretty popular guy.
It's strange that even on this new notes feature on Fantasy National, most players have notes next to their name, some sort of tidbit positive or negative. There's just nothing next to Tony Finau as of right now. It absolutely blows my mind. I guess the only other guy that we just kind of glossed over in this range, coming off the good week, another player that is super popular in DraftKings circles when it comes to constructing lineups, is Tommy Fleetwood. I don't know what to make of Tommy here, and just I mentioned all the guys that I like already, and I think that, I guess it depends on how ownership shakes out, but Tommy's always popular. That I'd rather take Molinari over Tommy Fleetwood, and if I'm going to pivot onto someone, I'm not going to go to Jordan Spieth or Xander. I'll probably just go down to Patrick Cantlay if that's going to be the case. But Ben, where do you see Tommy coming in? Maybe even Webb too. If the defending champion is just sitting right there. I know his performance was stupid last year because he made every single putt, but it doesn't seem like anyone wants a piece of him now.
No, Webb's not going to be overly popular. He was really cheap last year. I don't have it in front of me, but this is a different situation. Fleetwood, yeah, like many people, I've been on him recently. I bet him, and it just never works. I should stop doing that. But I expect him to be very popular as well, especially if people go balanced. I expect, like a Fleetwood Molinari with one of the top guys as a pretty common build. I will say for me, again, I'm not super high on this range as a whole, but the one guy that we haven't mentioned that I kind of like is Patrick Reed. He's 8,100. Just a guy that, again, I think seeing the course, I'm not too worried about the results, but he's played this enough. Game's not really super sharp, but again, it's not ugly either. And, he's another one really good around the greens, can scramble. He'll fit some of, I like to build some correlated lineups. He will definitely be in there with the Day, even Spieth, guys who can be creative around the greens.
The one thing that I worry about with Reed is just solely is the same reason that, Phil wanted to skip this event, what Phil has talked about. Maybe the softer conditions will help him out a little bit. If they put up the rough, the balls don't just fly into the water everywhere. Is that he's so bad off the tee from time to time that he might shoot 80 one of these days. Now, he has the possibility of like what we saw at Augusta last year, and he actually has been really good with his irons at this course the past 4 years, despite having no finish better than T22 and a missed cut thrown in there, but 2.7. 4.8, 0.7, 3.3. So he can play well at these courses because it's not a bomber's course by any means. But Rick, what do you make of Reed off the tee and the potential for him blowing up? That would be my concern.
Yeah, that was additionally my concern. He lost strokes off the tee last week. He's now lost strokes in, oh my gosh, it's something like 9 of his last 10 rounds off the tee. This is not a place where you want to be spraying it all over the course. I think that he is more likely to throw up a bunch of big numbers and miss the cut than he is to go the other way. So I won't get too heavily invested in Patrick Reed. I just think that I'd prefer to find some from safer options, some guys that I think can find the fairway, keep it in play off the tee, and then make some putts. So the out for Reed is that he throws darts and gets scorching, which I don't know how likely that's actually going to be.
Well, Ben, you're the best person to talk about what happens when Patrick Reed gets scorching hot and you win all the money.
That's true. I have strokes gained. Patrick Reed is very good for me. Masters, I do see a little correlation with that. And you guys are definitely, off the tee is a major concern. And similar to what I said with Rahm, there's a lot of guys this week where I say I really like them. I think they're in a good spot. And I see massive blow up risk at the same time. Reed is certainly in that bucket. Not going to be even near my cash lineup. Someone like Kuchar, who you guys alluded to, much safer. But course like this, I'm trying to embrace, the volatility. Water balls, it's, it doesn't discriminate. One unlucky gust, one bad bounce, a lot of things can change just on that alone.
And that happened to Tony Finau 2 years ago here. He was actually well inside the cut line and made a quad on Friday on 17 and missed the cut by 1 stroke. So there's a lot of just built-in weirdness to this course where blowups can happen. You need to be able to take yourself out of that situation, get kind of lucky throughout the week. That's why this tournament's so weird as opposed to a lot of the other high-end tournaments with these stacked fields that we see over the season. But let's talk about the $7,000 range. Last year, you mentioned the Webb Simpson price. He was $7,300 last year. If you look at the top 10 leaderboard in terms of DraftKings scoring last season, 7,300, 7,300, 7,200, 6,700, 7,200, 7,300, 6,900, 8,200. The Tommy Fleetwood at $8,200 was like the high guy on the totem pole here, and then $7,700. Those were the top 10 in terms of DraftKings scoring. So no one expensive. I don't know if that will ever happen again because last year was just so bizarre with how everything ended up shaking out. But this $7,000 range is really where you can make your bones and solidify your lineups, and where the pricing is so soft. You get a lot of really good names in here, and Paul Casey is the first one at the top of the list. He's $7,900. I expect him to be super popular. He rates out perfectly for everyone. He plays well at Pete Dye courses. He's great tee to green. We know he can't putt, but that's baked in. He has 2 top 3 finishes in his last 3 starts. He's played well at this course with top 25s each of the past 2 seasons. So Rick, how popular can Paul Casey get before I can't play him? Because I really want to play Paul Casey.
I think it's one of these situations again where you mentioned it. There's so many good plays. Even Paul Casey at 7,900. Like Matt Kuchar's always pretty popular in these. Henrik Stenson finally showed signs of life. He's right below these guys. I mean, I think there's other options that probably keep Paul Casey's ownership in check, but he's certainly going to be one of the most popular players. I think if he crept over, I don't know, 23, 24, 25%, I think I'd start to kind of stay away. And that might go with a lot of golfers, right? Just because of that blow up risk. But on paper, again, one of the safest players. I'm sure he'll make my cash game lineups or when I play Ben in a head to head or whatever it is. But like Paul Casey's probably going to be one of those guys. I just think you have to either find some unique builds or set yourself a cutoff for, okay, if I think he's going to be over this amount, we're going somewhere else.
Ben, what do you make of Paul Casey here?
Yeah, I'm with you guys. And I kind of, again, and this is, every individual has to break this down. I was a little against the grain with Molinari. Paul Casey's not where I'm looking to make a stand. I like him. I think he's certainly cash viable, safe. And, Rick's spot on. There's a lot of guys that will keep it from getting massive, maybe in smaller field tournaments. You see guys who can creep into the 30s, but I expect Casey to be very popular, but nothing outrageous where it's like, okay, I need to possibly just look for some pivots just on the ownership factor. He just makes too much sense, and he is underpriced.
So Casey at $7,900, Phil is also at $7,900. It does look like he's actually going to tee it up, and no one's going to use him. And he doesn't like this course. He's already taking himself out of the mix. So we'll see what happens with Phil. Stenson, Louis, C. Woo! Kim, the most overpriced player in the field, Cameron Champ at $7,700. Poulter, Leishman, Cam Smith, who's missed 2 of 2 cuts here in his career. Charles, who was second at this event last year somehow, despite having the worst year ever. Woodland, Noren. That's $7,500 up to $8,000. From this range, I like Casey. I like Ian Poulter. And God help me, folks, I think I might actually use Siwoo in DraftKings this week. I usually just bet Siwoo Kim, but he is someone that has shown a propensity to play really well at this course, Ben.
No doubt. I thought you were going to say Noren. I was going to have to just leave the show. But, this is a weird range. I think Poulter makes a ton of sense. Casey, we just talked about. And maybe I'm in the minority.
Let me guess. You're going to say Louis, aren't you?
No. I'm trying to be better with that. I played him again last week. It's so bad. Now, having said that, Louis would probably come out. How Charles came in second is beyond me. The guy I was going to say is Mark Leishman. To me, he just seems underpriced. I know, again, a guy with course history that doesn't stand out, but a lot of guys have that here. And, he's usually up there. I know this is a stronger field, so it bounces a little in terms of the price, but I'm pretty comfortable with him at 7,600. Can just be a staple of your lineups. Has a ton of room to get there without having a big finish in terms of placement points. I don't know if I'm in the minority there or he's someone that may actually be pretty popular.
It's really tough to say. I don't think that he's going to be super popular because I do think that a lot of the ownership will go, like Rick mentioned, to Kuchar, to Casey, to Henrik Stenson, and even Ian Poulter to a lesser extent. I do think that it's not he's going to be super duper popular, but he'll suck up enough of the ownership that Leishman may get left by the wayside. He's actually gained strokes on approach in 6 consecutive events, but like when you look at where he pops, like he's gained a massive amount of strokes putting in 4 of the past 6, and then he had WGC Mexico where he lost almost 10 strokes putting. So it did balance itself out and corrected a little bit, but I just worry that he's all putter right now because it's not like he's getting 9 strokes with approaches. He's getting 0.8 and 0.3 or 1. So, Rick, do you have any sort of take on Leishman? Because I guess I'm trying to say I don't really. I just kind of nothing him.
Yeah, I'm pretty lukewarm on him, and I think one of the mistakes that a lot of guys, I'm sure we get these questions all the time. It's like, what are your thoughts on Mark Leishman, or what are your thoughts on X player? And like sometimes I don't really have thoughts, right? Like I don't feel good about him, I don't feel bad about him. I'm just kind of like lukewarm. He's fine. To a point that Ben mentioned, his win equity, I have him at about let's see here, 1.6% to win this, which obviously doesn't sound like much, but compared to his peers, at times he's 3 or 4 times higher. So that did pop off for me. There's no real, hey, like, his strokes gain numbers have been great recently or anything like that, but his win equity did pop off. I will be making my stand on Ian Poulter, who, worldwide, playing great right now, grinds himself into the top 25 last week, despite never really, doing too much of anything. I like to see my guys continually improve throughout the week, finishes 23rd, 4, 6, 6th place finishes or better worldwide in his 4 starts previous to that. Good course history here, continues to gain strokes tee to green, like lots of things to like about Ian Poulter. And quite honestly, a lot of the same stuff that we said last week, guys that fit the mold last week that had good course history at API are kind of similar players. So I'll feel like Poulter was a staple in my lineups last week, and he's probably going to be a staple in them again this week.
Yeah, listen, I really hope for my sake Ian Poulter wins. I have him to win outright. He's going to be in a ton of my DK lineups, and I already bet him to win the Masters. So when he wins this week, then wins the Masters, I'm going to be a millionaire, and I'm never going to have to work again. So it's going to be fantastic. You might not see me after the Masters or Ian Poulter ever again if he can somehow crank out these 2 wins here in the next month. Below $7,500, all the way down to $7,000. Martin Keimer pops up in here. He's just sort of a favorite of mine. I have no real. He's playing a little bit better, I guess. He hits a ton of fairways. That's always nice. He's brutal around the greens, but when he's locked in, he just sticks it to 10 feet every time and makes half the putts, and then he wins 2 majors at a Players' Championship and goes on his way. So I'm going to use a little bit of Party Martin Keimer, but Brendan Grace is the one for me that really not necessarily checks out. He's 5 of 5 in cuts here, but he doesn't have a finish inside the top 40. So something is a bit off here. I do like the way he plays on Bermuda. If this course plays harder, which it historically did in March as opposed to May, I think that benefits Brendan Grace. But I just go back and look at some of the tournaments where he's played really well. He's won at Heritage, another Pete Dye course where the greens are really small. He has an excellent short game, and he's not going to bomb it off the tee. If you can take driver out of his hand, get him to hit 3-wood, and just get him to put it down the middle of the fairway, he has a chance to be live. Now, he somehow found water on the 17th hole at Phoenix. There's far more water here, so maybe he has a magnet for this sort of thing, but I don't think that anyone is going to own Brendan Grace. And when we talk about a lot of the people in this range, Ben, I think he kind of sticks out as an equivalent value to a lot of other players, but is going to be 120th the ownership.
He's an interesting guy. I have a tough time gauging him just in terms of how good he is. Obviously, he's had some strong finishes in majors at really tough courses. You say, I agree. I think if it's windy, if March, maybe that does change in terms of how difficult this plays. So I'm into him. Obviously, RCB is going to be popular. Another guy, Rick alluded to this earlier. He would have been a little higher priced. He had a good finish. Obviously, that water ball on 18 didn't help, but that's neither here nor there. Who else? Ty Hatton. Guys like this, this is where we get to the range. You're not going to find anyone who checks all the boxes. Obviously, you're going to have to me, I look for, can they do one thing that I'm really interested in very well? So someone like Grace, I know he can play in really tough, extreme conditions. That's good enough for me. Ty Hatton, he can really scramble. He can putt sometimes. So I'm going to look to those guys. This is a tough, Billy Ho, not for me. Keegan, never again. Are you, Pat, I know you said Keimer. Are you going to go to Keimer? I know that was several years ago where he won here. You going back to your favorite German?
Well, it is the second biggest betting win of my lifetime is Martin Keimer to win this tournament in 2014. So yeah, I'm going to go back to him. I'm not going to have a ton of DraftKings exposure. I did bet him to win and place at 160 to 1, then 140 to 1 as the each way would work on him. But I do like him here. The other ones that I'm looking at, like Furyk and Grillo, kind of stick out. I'm never really in on those two guys, but I think this course makes a lot of sense for them. But I do think that players like Rafa, like you mentioned, Charles Howell at 7,300 are just going to soak up a lot of ownership, and I'm good with fading those guys. I like Charles Howell this week. I like Rafa this week, but I don't like them substantially more than some of the other guys in this area. You mentioned Hatton. I do like him too. What do you think, Rick?
Yeah, super awkward pricing tier for me. I will plug and play RCB in quite a few if I needed someone from this spot. I'm a super glutton for punishment, so you might be able to get me back in on Keegan, who just completely ejected as he normally does. But you know what? I like to see my currently winning Pat really high on Thursdays so that I can just mentally spend all that money, right? So I'm okay with fading on Saturday and Sunday, which is exactly what Keegan's going to do. The one guy that I hate him, I never play him, but continues to pop off for me a little bit.
Luke List.
And no, well, yeah, that's every week. That's built into the model. But it's actually Bubba. I mean, four straight top 25s coming in. Was firing darts last week. I think he gained like six strokes on approaches. It is absolutely a type of play where I could see him finishing dead last, or I could see him actually being in contention here. So I wouldn't play him in any safe format, but I play Bubba probably like once or twice a year, and I might fit him into a handful of lineups.
Bubba's really strange that he has made 6 of his past 7 cuts at Sawgrass, yet he's never finished better than
Right.
T37, which is just really strange. But he has a great Pete Dye track record. Like, he won at TPC Louisiana for his first win at the Zurich Classic. He's won at Travelers multiple times now, another Pete Dye course at TPC River Highlands. And he won the match play in Austin, which is another Pete Dye course. It's just this one seems to, it doesn't necessarily have his number, but I think there's just so much water here that he can't get away with that 1 or 2 bad tee shots that he has every single week.
Yeah, it is really interesting. It's almost hard to do. It's almost hard to make that many cuts and not have a top 25 somewhere in there. Just in terms of like his bell curve, you'd think he would have finished a little bit higher at some point or missed more cuts. So it is very strange. I don't know what the factors are, but as I continue to do research, as I continue to look at it, this range isn't great. It's RCB. It's whatever else you want to plug in. But Bubba was like the one guy that made me scratch my head a little bit and take a closer look at.
What do you make of Bubba, Ben? Because, I mean, with the way that you're talking, you can construct a pretty good Jason Day, Jordan Spieth, Tony Finau, Phil Mickelson, Bubba lineup.
Yeah, that's not going to be duped. Again, I don't want to overstate because what do I know? I don't know how different it's going to play from March to May, but if it does play a little longer, if you can be a little more aggressive, I think that could help someone like Bubba. You're not worried about the upside. It is an anomaly. Those course history results don't really make sense. If he's getting in trouble, eventually he's going to front load some of that through the first 36 holes and he's going to get cut. But at the same time, this is a guy that can take advantage, obviously, of the par fives. It's more about, can he avoid some of these blow up holes? 7,300, it gives you enough wiggle room where he is a viable candidate. If he can make the weekend, he could come in 40th, but score the 20th most points. And that's always what we're after. Obviously, he is an elite scorer. Don't think I'm going to get there in safety. I prefer Griot, someone like that, but I'll probably have a couple shares in some big, you got to beat 100,000 people type tournaments.
What do you make of Kevin Kisner? Coming off an excellent ball striking week, 4 top 30s in a row for him, someone who's lost in a playoff here in the past, has contended at Pete Dye courses, like Bubba, who ended up winning the match play. He was second at the Pete Dye TPC Austin. He's played really well at Heritage, another Pete Dye course with very small greens on Bermuda grass on the coast where it can be a little bit colder. That I don't know if people are going to be on him or off of him because you have Lucas Glover in this range who everyone's going to use. Pat Perez has withdrawn. Apparently he blew out his Achilles. That's never good. Taylor Gooch is dealing with a wrist injury that caused him to pull out of API last week. That I'm really getting entranced by Kevin Kisner, especially because Matthew Fitzpatrick too is right at the same price. I'm not using Matthew Fitzpatrick, but I guarantee you people will coming off that. So I think I'm going to lock Kisner into a lot of my lineups here, Ben.
I'm a Kisner guy. I love Kisner. I think this course suits him well. Played very well at API a couple years ago. That can't with Leishman, might add. He's done it in major. He's not going to be intimidated by a strong field, and you don't need to be aggressive off the tee here, and that suits him. Second in 2015, flat 7K. Him, and I'll just throw out, and this guy again. This might be I kind of like Ryan Moore, who's not on the mind, but he's got some things that set up well. He's a shorter hitter, but he can hit the long irons just fine. Can get hot with the approaches, and he used to be a decent putter. So if that can get going, these are guys that you're almost, now we're in the area, you just want them to make the cut. They give you 72 holes. How bad could it really be?
Do you have any specific take on Kisner, Rick, or is he one of those kind of guys for you?
No, so you guys actually nailed the two. So sometimes when I go through this process, I'll group guys together that are very similar, put them in pods, like they might be specialists or they might be guys who are buy low candidates, something like that. And the two that actually paired most commonly together were Kisner and Ryan Moore. And if you look at it, it's pretty obvious why. Even going back to last week, brilliant tee to green for both of them. Both gained over 6 strokes. Kisner gained 7. Both great off the tee. It was Kisner that gained 3.5 on approaches and Moore who gained 3 strokes around the green. So they just did it a little bit of different ways. They both lost strokes putting, which we've talked about, countless times, that is the one stat that is most volatile, or the one that even if a guy just gets hot, so to speak, and is neutral for the week, is even for the week, can go out and put you in a really good spot. So both of these guys on paper in my model paired together, I think there is room for upside because they've been losing strokes putting at least last week. So yeah, those are really the two. I think they're great candidates. You guys nailed it.
Let's go into the $6,000 range. Actually, before we do that, I want to take a look back at a leaderboard because something jarred in my mind with Kevin Kisner when you guys were talking. I was like, Kevin Kisner plays really well at this course. Francesco Molinari plays really well at this course. Where have I seen those names appear near the top before? Let me go back and look at last year's Open Championship where Molinari ended up winning. Molinari, Rose, Rory, Kisner, Xander, Tiger, Chappell. All of those players have a pretty good track record at the Players' Championship. Then you have Pepperell, Spieth, Kuchar, who's won the Players, Finau, Webb, who won the Players last year, Ryan Moore, Tommy Fleetwood, who had a top 10 finish last year, Cantlay, who was the first-round leader last year, Jason Day, Adam Scott, Charlie Hoffman. Does that do anything for you, something to look at, or is that just pure coincidence, do you think?
Well, I remember Rahm shooting like 30 over, so I hope that it doesn't correlate perfectly. But yeah, there's something to be said about that. And that's where correlating your lineups comes into play. You can do things like that, similar skill sets. I do look at that. I don't overhaul my entire portfolio, but certainly when I have 50-50 coin toss decisions, I'll pull things like that.
Is that a course where you think it could make a little bit of sense, Rick, that it would cross over because there was so much around the green work and you had to get yourself up and down and it played a little bit tougher? There was some wind and you had to hit fairways last year that maybe there could be some sort of correlation?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's so many factors that go into any one single golf tournament. All these courses so vastly different. But when we can find threads, whether it be the length of the course or the style of the course or the size of the green, like that stuff is important. So if we can find a handful of those threads, like you just have, and piece them together, I do think it's important. To Ben's point, for me, it's mostly a tiebreaker, or it's just kind of a thought process. I'm not going to live and die by correlated courses or correlated leaderboards, but I do think it's something that can break ties and be a handful of a percentage for you.
Jumping into the 6K range, I got my two guys at the top. They're both from Korea. They both played well last week. One is Byun Hanan, the other is Sung Jae Im. Change my mind, Ben.
Can't do it. Different reasons. Obviously, Sung Jae Im is just super impressive. Feels like he gains everywhere. Just solid around the green, solid ball striker, doesn't make a lot of mistakes. Benyon, we know his game. He can't putt, but he kind of showed last week. Even if he's just not awful, he's gonna do it to the green. Just an incredible ball striker. Fine result here last year. I'm gonna throw, and I feel kind of gross saying this because I've been preaching that you want a good around the green game. I will say that Chesson Hadley is a guy that I like. Is this bad?
Feinberg stated the Chesson Hadley case on yesterday's show, and then I showed him that he's lost strokes around the green in 15 of his past 17 tournaments. I guess the argument that I'll make for you is if he's that dialed in with his irons, he's never going to have to chip.
Well, that's what I was kind of alluding to. That it's a super dicey situation. He's really cooking with the irons, but at the same time, if it gets windy or something, and this guy's forced to scramble, it's over. He was 11th here last year. He played well. He had a 9 on the card last week. That skewed the score. I don't know. I mean, I'm glad Feinberg's with me. At least someone can get in the Chesson Hadley bucket. I don't know how popular he'll be per se, but I did look at him at 6,700.
I believe Kenny Kim is going to be on Chesson Hadley as well. Rick,
Okay.
and Im, you're saving a lot of money in character space right there off the hop. And then Chesson Hadley, we'll throw him into the mix. Do you have any particular takes on these guys?
Well, in terms of strictly character space, you could throw Kevin Na in there, but that would be the only reason to play him. I think Sung Jae and Benyon are just fine, but the one guy that I'll throw out in this range is Jason Kokrak, who has presumably just revived his career. I know he's missed plenty of cuts here, but without looking at it, I assume this is by far the best year of his career that he's ever had. Just looking at last week, 12 strokes gained off the tee, 12 strokes gained tee to green, 4.5 off the tee, lost 4 putting. That's the combination we're looking for, right? Just go play a neutral tournament of putting. Go lose 1 stroke on the greens. When you're doing it so well in other facets, like, that's the type of player that we're looking for down here in the sub 7,000s. We're looking to cling on to one thing. Are you a specialist? Do you have great course history? Like, what is that one thing? For Kokrak, it's recent form and doing it the right way for something where we can actually think that there's more of a ceiling to it.
Yeah, I'm with you on if it was just no name next to it, not knowing the form, just looking at the numbers, like you mentioned, 12.4 strokes gained tee to green last week, 8.4, 7.1, 5.1, 3.1. So he's massively increasing week to week to week to week. But like you mentioned with Justin Thomas off the top, are we suffering from like an Icarus effect here, where are we now just too close to the sun that natural regression has to come in? He's not going to continue to gain over 7 strokes a week with his irons.
Yeah, there's probably some point where this is all going to come crashing down, but I've been thinking that for Jason Kokrak for a handful of weeks. I think the good news is he's been completely out of his mind in some facets of his game, but like even putting, like he still doesn't really putt it all that well. His around the green numbers are, fluctuating all over the place, kind of going back and forth every round. So I still think that if he does regress a little bit and he's not throwing darts, I think there's other outs for him. Just as a career long, like I don't think Jason Kokrak is now going to top 20 everything or top 15 everything for the rest of his career. So I do think that we will see some regression here, but hey, it's $6,700, Pat. Like the other options down here are not necessarily great.
They aren't, but this just seems like a week where people's lineups are going to OD by snorting the Kokrak on this one. Like he might be like 25%.
Oh man, really? God, I hope he is. I've been fading him, and there is an element of like, you feel like you missed out, so you don't want to jump on. It's too late. But the guy, I've been saying that for weeks and not being fully punished, but it hasn't been good. And he is 6,700. So there's a chance that he regresses and still gives you a middling result that you're not dead. I'll just throw out one. Again, this is as gross as Chisholm Hadley. I've been playing this guy, so maybe it's a little bias. His irons have been awful. Daniel Berger at 6,700, same price. He's, I don't know. I don't even know why I'm making a case for this guy, to be honest. He's been riding a hot putter. His irons have been really bad. I don't know if he's still lingering with this wrist or whatnot, but if you zoom out and you look at his results in the past, he's a much better ball striker than he's been showing. That price, I knew he wouldn't be, pricey, but at 6,700, I thought it was worth a couple shares. Maybe we do get, he's a Florida guy. He could get hot. I wouldn't be stunned to see him have an okay showing this week.
Berger actually led the Players Championship in strokes gained approach 1 year ago. So that is something to watch out for.
That's
But the 3 guys that we mentioned off the top, Im, Ann, and Kokrak, those are the only 3 players right now that I have projected in double digits in terms of ownership. So it would make sense that you probably don't want to use all of them, Rick, just because, at the bottom, the chalk is never really the way to go. I love Ann. I love Im. And the case you make for Kokrak is perfect. But I think if I have to leave one of those guys off my teams, it's probably going to be Kokrak. Which one of them would it be for you?
Well, yeah, it's probably Benny On. And I don't know if it's just, recent. I just feel like, and I think Ben makes a great psychological point where if you've been riding a guy and he's playing well, you continue to ride, or even if he's not, like we've gone down on the Jordan Spieth ship. Like I missed out on Benny On, and I'm now just like refusing to get on this. And so it's one of those situations where it might be a flaw in my thinking, but Benny On's probably the guy that I go away from. I think I'd rather play Sung Jae or Kokrak. And I'll throw out one more name, which might be a little gross as well. What about Chris Kirk, who has now gained strokes tee to green in 8 of his last 10 rounds? He's okay around the greens. He is terrible on the greens, but we saw what he can do where if you just catch a little bit of fire, right? I think he was 8 under on Saturday last week at the API. So again, $6,400. We're looking for a few things that we can cling to. And Chris Kirk was one of those guys for me as well.
Chris Kirk is a short course specialist. Chris Kirk is a Pete Dye specialist. And Chris Kirk has the 5th most strokes gained of anyone in this field over the past 5 years at the Players Championship. So at $6,400, I'm with you. But Ben, I want to throw it to you. Im, Kokrak, and Ann. The reason I'm going to pass by Kokrak, I know the ball striking has been better, but of those 3 guys, like he's bad around the greens historically, and the other 2 guys are excellent around the greens. And I think that's a translatable skill year after year after year at this course.
Totally agree. And there is something to be said. I've been really heavy on and Im recently. So I kind of feel like I'm just going to continue that trend. Kokrak's guy, I haven't been on too much, but the around the green difference is the difference between those 3 for me.
So let's go to Trey Mullenix, someone who just continuously makes cut after cut after cut. He is priced all the way down, which is kind of shocking. He's made 7 cuts in a row. His best finish was at Phoenix, but he went Farmers, Phoenix, AT&T, 25, 15, 22. You're just looking to get someone through the cut here. And the fun thing about Trey Mullenix is that if he makes the cut, he's actually a much better DraftKings scorer than he is actual player. He's going to make a ton of birdies. He has a horrendous short game, although it was better at Honda, which I was stunned about. And even at his time at Pebble Beach, it was a little bit better, but he has some bad weeks where he's losing like 4 strokes around the green. So if I'm going to make a case against like Chesson Hadley, because he sucks around the greens, I shouldn't be really projecting it onto Trey Mullenix as well. Just, I think that he's been far more consistent so far this year. Does he pique your fancy at all?
Yeah, I mean, it's been impressive, the string of cuts, and he's in a price range. That's his. I mean, my biggest thing is he fills a unique build. That if you say, okay, I'd like this weird kind of segue up top, and now I need a flat 6K guy. It's limited. I don't want to make a case for Grayson because he's not good at golf, and the other guys I don't. Sun Kang, I guess you could look to, but for me it would be Mullenix. So I don't mind that. I think there's a lot of conditions if the course plays a certain way that are really dicey for him. And if he's abnormally owned relative to a 6K price range, I'm not sure if I even get over the field. But in certain builds, I probably will be forced to look to him just because I need a flat 6K guy.
Rick, any interest in Trey Mullenix? It's Trey Day.
A little bit. I love that we say he's in a pricing tier. He's like, he's not even a tier. He's like DFL, like $6,000 bare minimum. So yeah, I think there's a little bit of something appealing about him. I'll tell you what though, if you're willing to spend an extra $100, I was gravitating towards Johnny Vegas, who, T25 or T23 last week has, gone out first round leader. He's faded a little bit, but has found himself in top 20s on the leaderboard. I mean, T23, T16, cut T10 in his last 4 starts, $6,100, $100 more than the min price, is probably where I'll end up going because I assume that if I have 6,000, I have 6,100 to spend. So I'll go back to Vegas, but really between Johnny Vegas and Trey Mullenix, like those are probably the only 2 guys under Chris Kirk that I'd play.
I think that Sung Kang at the bare minimum at $6,000 is very much in the equation too. And I think that you only start to consider these guys if you want to go with like that Dustin Rose lineup that I talked about at the beginning. Now you need to go into this tier of player, but Sung Kang has been playing really well recently too. Hell, we've basically talked up every like Asian player in the field. Are you just going to build the all Asian lineup this week and go with it?
Could work. There's a lot of good names on there. I bet you can make a pretty good one.
Well, you can start with Tiger or Ricky and then work your way down.
Yeah, there you go.
I think that was the best King of the Hill joke of all time. I mean, it's not even really a joke. The best Asian player in the history of golf, Tiger Woods. So you go Ricky, Tiger, Hideki, On, Im, Sung Kang. Boom. Win all the monies. Ben, does that work for you?
What about Satoshi, your boy?
I don't know if I can go to Satoshi here. The guy's been, he's been really bad.
Yeah, not good.
I'm just trying to take a look at some of these other guys down in the field. Bazzelli was one that I found interesting, not because he's good, because he's not, but the types of courses that he plays really well at kind of mirror the Players' Championship. Like he's played really well at Valspar, short course, harder, Bermuda. He's played really well at Desert Classic, which is a Pete Dye design. He's played really well at RSM, Bermuda, coastal course in this region of the country. So you know what? I'm overthinking it with Dominic Bazzelli. Never mind. I'm going to withdraw my statements on the Boz. Is there anyone else in the 6K range that you do like, though, Ben?
I mean, not in the lower 6K range.
Just overall 6K.
Okay, let me.
Spawn, Hoffman, Ryder, hardly knew her.
Hoffman, he tried to hero the cut last week. Wasn't there. He just hasn't put it together, but I think it's trending upward a little. So I don't mind that. Obviously, I don't know what I'm going to do with. You got Matt Wallace, who's another guy who would have been a little pricier. He's going to have some ownership, beer guard. Those are just names that, if you're in a jam, but I'm going to try to just stick to what I feel pretty comfortable with in the 6s, and that's On and Im. Maybe I go to Kirk. I had a little Kirk last week, which felt like a genius, didn't fully pan out. Can I play Lahiri. I would love to, but I don't think I can get there.
If you're gonna play Lahiri, I think you're just better off playing Lucas Beauregard if you're looking for someone like that, because he's just better.
Yeah, that about sums it up with poor Lahiri. But again, I don't want to get too crazy. Danny Lee, who, my God, he made 2 awful sevens last week to miss the cut on Friday. He was actually playing pretty well, and then he hit a couple balls OB. These are just, tourney plays. I don't feel there's so many red flags on all these guys.
Rick, who else in the $6,000 range can you consider putting into your lineups? And I do want to throw Harold Varner III out at you. He had a bad week last week, but he has made 3 of 3 cuts at this tournament, was top 10 last year, and has gotten better each progressive year. There could just be something about this course he likes.
Yeah, HV3 perked my ears up a little bit. Didn't do much more than that. I mean, I'm really stuck in this range, and it might just be because personally, a lot of my builds won't get me down here. I'll probably start a little bit higher, get some more balanced builds, so I won't have to touch a lot of these guys. I'll tell you, guys, I will not be playing Brendan Steele, who gained 7 strokes putting last week, and our buddy Aaron Baddeley, who somehow found 10 around the greens. Pat, like, that's almost impossible.
I mean, only Webb Simpson making 40-foot putts from off the green could ever challenge him in that category.
Yeah, so I'll try to avoid this range as much as possible. I think it's going to be pretty easy to do. It's Kirk. It might be Vegas, it might be Mullinax, but for me, I'm mostly checked out of this area.
Yeah, so I think that pretty much covers it for the guys that we're really in on. Do you have a pick to win, Rick?
Oh man, my one and done is Tiger, but honestly, I think Brooks is going to win
it. What about you, Ben?
I'm gonna say Rahm wins.
I see. I'm stuck between, because I have to do this Golf Digest thing where I only pick one guy, and I'm stuck between, do I want to hype up Sergio or do I want to hype up Paul Casey? Yeah, I might have to flip a coin. I flipped a coin last week between Phil and Molinari to who to bet, and it came up Phil. So maybe I'll flip it, and whoever it picks, I'll take the opposite of that.
Do you find yourself having to pick someone who is not the favorite every week so that if it hits, you look even smarter? What's your strategy on this Golf Digest thing?
I don't know. I mean, I so rarely read the comments on anything, and that's one that I did. I decided, I was like, I wonder what people are like. Hey, Golf Digest, it's a really big publication. I'll see. And just like, people get so triggered if you don't pick a winner. Like, these guys don't know fuck all. Like, fuck these guys. I have, and in that column, I think I have 4 winners so far this year, and I hit Kuchar at 60. I hit Phil Mickelson at 25. But I've a lot of weeks, like I picked Jason Day last week. I think I had Rory 2 weeks ago. I had Brooks at the Honda Classic when he came second. Like, sometimes you go with the higher price guys, but like, I don't know. I feel like Sergio, Hideki, like I like Tiger this week too. I bet on all 4 of those guys, Tiger, Hideki, Sergio, and Casey, that I don't know. I like all 4 of them. Why don't I just go with the one with the longer odds? And if it wins, I look like a genius.
Yeah, that's probably smart. I like that strategy.
And I think other people will be taking Tiger too. So Sergio or Casey for you, Ben?
To win, it would be Sergio.
Just that he knows. What if Casey is trailing by 3 strokes going into Sunday? Would that change your mind?
Yeah, he needs. That would certainly help. Yeah, Casey. If Casey's winning after Saturday, just rip up your ticket. Unfortunately.
Okay, so big name guy that misses the cut. I'm gonna say Justin Thomas misses the cut this year. Ben.
God, I wanted to say. Can I say Justin Thomas too? That's who I wanted to say. It would be one of the top 2, him or DJ. I actually think that, one of them. We could certainly see multiple, but yeah, I would go JT or DJ.
Rick, who's your big name is going to miss the cut?
I'll take the other Justin Rose, who didn't play very inspiring golf last week, and just a lot of grenades out there. He can find some water.
The last time Justin Rose played this poorly, he won the next week at Torrey Pines. Remember that.
Probably will win it.
Yeah, I think I might have to use some Justin Rose. It doesn't seem, just based on our conversation and some of the conversations that I've had with other people, it doesn't seem like anyone's going to use him.
I'm almost glad if you're using Rose, I'm glad he got cut. Like, I think that's better than him just being, it was just so ugly last week that, it's like a full reset almost. And he's such a pro. Sunday he was struggling so badly. It was just like, he was having fun with it. It wasn't like he was trying to make a charge. Kind of like, Ricky got off to that hot start. Then he regressed. Rose had no chance. He just, Sunday I thought maybe he can get himself into position, but he just couldn't. It's almost like mentally didn't use any energy. Now you get full reset and just kind of, click back in. He's so good. It's unbelievable that string he's had.
It's funny too, like the only surface where he has gained strokes over the last 2 years is actually on Bermuda. And looking at it right now, like he was fire with his irons on Thursday. He gained almost 4 strokes in the opening round with his irons, then progressively got worse as the week went along. Minus 0.2, minus 1.3, minus 2.2, yet still ended up in the positives for the week because he was so good on Thursday that I'm having a really tough time wrapping my mind around it, because I think that he might be the one, him or Justin Thomas, by the sounds of our conversation, if people listen to us or even think along the same lines as us, Rick, that those two seem like the two that might fall through the cracks. And if that's the case, I do feel like I should be on one of them.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the plethora of riches that we have here at the top, and some of these guys are just in sandwich pricing. So for our purposes on DraftKings, guys that are going to fall through the cracks are Thomas because they're in the sandwich, Justin Rose because they're in the sandwich. So like if you just before the tournament started gave me the ownership, I would probably just take the lowest, some of the lowest owned guys up here a lot of the time, because it's golf and it's variable and these guys can turn it around week to week. So it's certainly not a bad strategy. When you're trying to construct a lineup for, $50,000, things get a little bit hairy, but yeah, all of these guys are awesome. All of these guys can win. And at the same time, with this course being such, a minefield, I wouldn't, any one of them can miss the cut. It should be a lot of fun. Your cut sweat video is going to be killer, I hope.
Well, I mean, you guys are free to join and jump on. Feinberg and I were going to be in here on Friday afternoon, sweating the cut for the Players Championship live on the DraftKings YouTube channel, on my Facebook page, facebook.com/thepme, and my Twitter page. I think everyone's familiar with my Twitter antics of the yelling and the screaming and the making fun of people and then having them block me. Someone called me a cocksucker on Twitter last night, Ben, and then I told him he had ladies' glasses, that he blocked me.
Don't go after the glasses. That's what happens. Man, no respect out there. A lot of venom in the Twitter world these days.
I know.
Sad.
It's not. But imagine being that upset at someone, having someone throw something back at you, and then being so triggered, like, I can't deal with this. That was too mean. Like, hey, get over yourself, pal.
No respect. I'm sure. Hit the video with a like if that guy's watching.
Yeah,
we appreciate it.
I have my doubts he's going to watch. I am live on Wednesday afternoon, 1:00 p.m. Eastern time with Reed Fowler as well, taking everyone's questions. But people know where I'm going to be. People watch and listen to the Pat Mayo Experience. Rick, you already have one show out for this week. You're on this show. What else do you have coming out on the Rick Run Good YouTube channel?
Yeah, so the one and done video will be out shortly here. Scheduled that bad boy, so you should see that this morning. And then I do some of our fun contests with our friends over at Gups Corner. I'm in their GC Cup, so I'll release a video on that on Friday. And yeah, just trying to get as much video content as possible, because this is now the best time of the year as we enter really what is major season.
You can also check out Rick at DFS On Demand on Twitter and DFSOnDemand.com. Ben Rasa, Awesemo.com. You guys are live every day, aren't you?
Oh yeah, we're doing a ton of stuff there. Tuesdays at 2:30, me and Fantasy Golf Man Tim Frank. Wednesday night, me and Jason Roslin. Q&A. Obviously, a ton of stuff behind the paywall and Slack. March Madness. I'm sure I'll be spewing some nonsense there. We'll see what we can do in terms of brackets coming up. But as Rick just said, what an awesome time of the year for golf and just in general. A lot going on, so I'm certainly excited.
Again, you can follow Ben on Twitter at JazzRazDFS and check him out at Awesemo.com. I am Pat Mayo. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, or the Facebooks at the PME. I'll have my betting cheat sheet out on Wednesday afternoon. The live show on Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern time. The live show on Friday, Sweating the Cut with Jeff Feinberg. Going to be around like 4:30 p.m. Eastern time. We'll get a better sense of that on to just seeing how Thursday's round plays out. We'll get a better judge of the time, when the round's going to end, when the meaningful shots for the cut are actually going to happen. Then I'll tweet at a time and let everyone know. But other than that, the cheat sheet's going to be up on DraftKingsPlaybook.com. The betting show came out on Monday. I suggest you go check that out. The research show came out on Sunday. I suggest you go check that out as well. And remember, if you want to get into a draw for $20 DK, smash the like button, leave your DraftKings handle in the comment section, and tell me your favorite play between $7,000 $7,500. As you heard the three of us talk about it, it's a really weird range with a lot of decent to bad names in it. That's where the tournament was won last year. Maybe it's going to be won again. So I want to find that gem in there. My favorite guy, the under the radar guy, is Brennan Grace. So don't steal my guy, all right? I'm Pat Mayo. Good luck. The Players Championship. I'll see you next time.
That Mayo experience! Experience!